Paul Heyman is an American entertainment producer, promoter, performer, and marketing guru currently signed to WWE. He owned and was the creative visionary behind the revolutionary Extreme Championship Wrestling promotion from September 1993 until its closure in 2001. He is a most notable villain on WWE programming, having managed 5 WWE World Heavyweight Champions including Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, Rob Van Dam, Big Show, and CM Punk, respectively. Heyman is also the co-founder and executive producer for the Looking for Larry Agency, a New York City-based advertising marketing branding firm known for its innovative social media campaigns and interactive reach with various demographics. Heyman is a celebrated marketer, having placed on the prestigious list of Advertising Age's top 100 global marketers. Early life: Paul Heyman was born in Scarsdale, New York, the son of Richard S. Heyman, a prominent personal injury attorney in the Bronx who served in the U.S. Navy in World War II, and Sulamita Heyman, a Holocaust survivor. Heyman's family is Jewish, as is he. By age 11, he was running a mail-order business selling celebrity and sports memorabilia from his home. While still a teenager, Heyman fast-talked his way backstage at a Worldwide Wrestling Federation event at Madison Square Garden as a photojournalist. He was paid by the company for several of his photographs. He attended SUNY Purchase and Westchester Community College, where he worked on air as an opinionated, controversial host at the radio stations, and later became a producer and promoter for the New York City nightclub Studio 54 in the mid-1980s. Professional wrestling career: early career, Heyman began as a photographer and writer for third-party wrestling publications such as Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Heyman made his managerial debut on January 2, 1987, initially appearing on the Northeast Independent Circuit before moving to a more high-profile stint with Florida Championship Wrestling in February 1987. There, he joined forces with Kevin Sullivan and Oliver Humperdinck and first became known as Paul E. Dangerously because of his resemblance to Michael Keaton in the movie Johnny Dangerously. From there, he traveled to Memphis and the Continental Wrestling Association to manage Tommy Rich and Austin Idol in a heated feud with Jerry Lawler, a war which later carried over to the American Wrestling Association, with the original Midnight Express taking over for Idol and the face turned Rich. The Paul E. Dangerously gimmick was basically an extension of Heyman's own personality, a brash New Yorker with a yuppie attitude, often seen holding a mobile phone, which was occasionally used as a foreign object. Continental Wrestling Federation: after departing the AWA, Heyman went to the Alabama-based Continental Wrestling Federation. Paul with Eddie Gilbert's Hot Stuff Incorporated stable. Behind the scenes, Gilbert was the head booker of the promotion and Heyman became his assistant. Heyman was also the head booker for Windy City Wrestling in Chicago, and started developing a reputation as being an innovative television writer and producer. World Championship Wrestling. In 1988, Heyman jumped to Jim Crockett Promotions, where Dangerously again managed the original Midnight Express in a feud with the new Midnight Express and their manager, Jim Cornette, as well as managing Mean Mark Callis, who later became The Undertaker in WWE. He settled into the role of an announcer, joining Jim Ross to call the matches on WTBS World Championship Wrestling and other programming. During his role as an announcer, he feuded with Ross, Missy Hyatt, and Hyatt's boyfriend and actor Jason Hervey. In 1991, WCW needed to restructure its heels, so Heyman returned to the role as spokesman and ringside manager as the manager of the Dangerous Alliance, with Medusa as his assistant, managing Bobby Eaton, Rick Rude, Arn Anderson, WCW TV champion Steve Austin and Larry Zbyszko. Heyman led Rude to the United States title and the Anderson-Eaton tag team to the tag team titles. The Dangerous Alliance dominated WCW through most of 1992, meeting their biggest foes in Sting, Ricky Steamboat, Nikita Koloff, Barry Windham, Dustin Rhodes and the Steiner brothers. Heyman's major falling out with management occurred when WCW hired Bill Watts, the legendary former owner of the Mid-South Territory. Heyman was fired from WCW in January 1993, but sued the company based on claims of anti-Semitism. Heyman won a major undisclosed settlement, as Watts had been fired shortly after getting rid of Heyman, with Watts' termination coming on the heels of blatantly racist comments he gave during a Torch interview, which had been pointed out to TBS Vice President Henry Aaron. Eastern Championship Wrestling Extreme Championship Wrestling. After departing WCW, Heyman attempted to start a new promotion in Texas with Jim Crockett, Jr., but Crockett wanted to build a traditional wrestling brand while Heyman declared traditional wrestling was antiquated and a new take on the genre was needed. At this time, Eddie Gilbert was a booker for a Philadelphia-based promotion, NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling, which he did under the ownership of a local pawn shop owner named Todd Gordon. Heyman came in to help Gilbert teach the younger wrestlers how to perform on interviews, but Gilbert's erratic behavior became too much for Gordon, who had a major falling out with Gilbert right before the Ultra Clash event on September 18, 1993. From that point forward, Heyman was in charge of the creative direction of the company. As Paul E. Dangerously, he managed a few wrestlers, including Sabre, who Paul E. managed to the top, winning the ECW World Heavyweight Championship and the ECW World Television Championship and 911, but Heyman's increased workload led to him making fewer and fewer appearances on camera. A year later, the company was the flagship promotion of the struggling National Wrestling Alliance. A tournament was scheduled to be held in August 1994 for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, at an ECW-hosted event mostly featuring ECW wrestlers. The proposed outcome was the current ECW champion Shane Douglas becoming champion, but Heyman conspired with Douglas and Gordon without the knowledge of NWA President Dennis Corraluzzo to have Douglas publicly denounce the NWA and its tradition after winning the tournament. In his post-match speech, Douglas aggressively assaulted the title's lineage, throwing the belt itself down, proclaiming the NWA a dead organization, and declaring his ECW title a world-level championship. The plan for this shoot screwjob was known only to those three men. The surprise of the incident made headlines throughout the wrestling industry. That same week, Heyman and Gordon rechristened the promotion, eliminating the regional branding Eastern, and declaring the promotion Extreme Championship Wrestling. They broke the company away from the National Wrestling Alliance and ECW became its own entity, with Heyman encouraging wrestlers to express their true feelings about the WWF, the NWA, and WCW and allowing them to help develop their own characters. Many wrestlers willingly took on additional roles in company operations, such as handling merchandise and answering phones. The company grew a hardcore loyal fan base with which Heyman encouraged interaction. Eventually, Heyman bought the company from Todd Gordon and became sole owner of Extreme Championship Wrestling. Heyman's creative vision for ECW was based on the promotion's ability to rally its audience into an us versus them mentality, and while the resurgence in professional wrestling in the 1990s can be attributed to many factors, Heyman's extreme vision paved the way for Vince McMahon's Attitude Era, and Heyman is credited as the architect for the boom. ECW entered into bankruptcy in 2001, with the company $7 million in arrears, with over $3 million owed to the company by on-demand pay-per-view. After ECW folded, Heyman moved to WWE as the color commentator on Monday Night Raw, and also became a major force on the creative team behind the scenes. World Wrestling Federation Entertainment, broadcaster and commentator, Heyman became a broadcaster for the WWF, replacing Jerry Lawler as color commentator for Raw in March 2001. During that time, he resumed his storyline rivalry with Jim Ross. In July, while retaining his commentator role, Heyman recreated ECW as a stable, which then immediately merged with Shane McMahon's WCW to form the Alliance during the Invasion angle. After the Alliance's formation, Michael Cole replaced Heyman on commentary for the July 16 and July 23 episodes of Raw before Heyman took his position back on the July 30 episode, saying that Cole had not done a good job conveying the Alliance's message to fans. Heyman was fired following the 2001 Survivor Series. He was replaced by the returning Lawler, who holds the position to this day. Managing Brock Lesnar, he returned in March as the manager of Brock Lesnar. Heyman led Lesnar to the WWE Undisputed Championship when Lesnar beat The Rock at SummerSlam. Then at the Survivor Series, Heyman turned on Lesnar and helped The Big Show take the title from him. Heyman became the first man in professional wrestling history to manage 3 successive world champions when it was revealed that he was Kurt Angle's agent just days after Angle beat Big Show for the title. Heyman suffered a real-life injury in January, when taking the F5 from Lesnar at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, California. A major falling out between Heyman and McMahon occurred when McMahon ended the Lesnar-Heyman feud on television just weeks before WrestleMania, when Heyman was scheduled to manage Angle in the main event against Lesnar. Heyman left for a while, and was on WWE payroll for several months as a consultant regarding the television shows as he also received therapy on his neck. SmackDown General Manager after McMahon defeated his daughter Stephanie in October at the No Mercy 2003 pay-per-view, she was forced to resign from her position as General Manager of SmackDown. Heyman returned to television to assume Stephanie McMahon's on-camera role as GM and, unlike the fan-favorite character Stephanie portrayed, Heyman's character, like Eric Bischoff's on Raw, was portrayed similarly to that of Vince McMahon's on-screen role, an arrogant dictator of a boss that stacked the odds against his popular wrestlers and favored the unpopular ones. During this time, he realigned himself with Lesnar and proceeded to infuriate Undertaker, John Cena, and especially Chris Benoit by making sure he had no WWE Championship opportunities as long as he was GM. Eventually, on SmackDown, right before WrestleMania 20, Heyman asked the entire locker room to back him and Lesnar up against Stone Cold Steve Austin, but they just stood there and walked away from him, including one of Heyman's main supporters, The Big Show. On March 22, 2004, Heyman appeared on Raw to take part in the annual WWE Draft Lottery. During the show he was drafted to work for Bischoff on Raw, but instead decided to quit rather than work for Nemesis Bischoff, the man who he blamed for killing ECW by raiding its talent. Heyman was replaced by one of his former managerial clients, Kurt Angle. During Heyman's tenure on SmackDown, he served as the head writer and is credited with being the creative force behind the successful so-called SmackDown 6. He placed them in a triple-threat tag team feud over the WWE Tag Team Championship. This resulted in a string of high-caliber matches over several months, one of which was awarded 2002 Match of the Year by the Wrestling Observer. Heyman was awarded Best Booker. All of the SmackDown 6 went on to become world champions, with Edge, Benoit, Mysterio, and Angle becoming World Heavyweight Champions, Eddie Guerrero, Angle, Mysterio and Edge becoming WWE Champions, and Chavo Guerrero later becoming ECW World Champion in the later revived ECW, with Edge and Eddie Guerrero even being awarded a place in the WWE Hall of Fame. ECW One Night Stand revival. Heyman was heavily involved in the booking and promotion of the June 12, 2005 ECW reunion PPV, One Night Stand. Heyman returned to Raw on May 23 and confronted former WCW President Eric Bischoff, lauding ECW and criticizing WCW. Among other things, Heyman told him the following: ECW was a lifestyle, it was anti-establishment, it was countercultures, and it was up in your face. Heyman finished it up by setting Bischoff's ECW funeral wreath on fire. At One Night Stand, a visibly emotional Heyman came to the ring, got on his knees and bowed to the fans, who chanted "Thank you, Paul." He then cut a work-shoot promo insulting Bischoff, Edge, and JBL. Ohio Valley Wrestling. On July 10, 2005, it was reported that Heyman took over the positions of head booker and writer in OVW, a developmental territory maintained by WWE. It was during this time that he forged a real-life friendship with future WWE champion, CM Punk. Return of ECW as a WWE brand. On the May 22 episode of Raw, Heyman appeared as ECW representative promoting One Night Stand. On May 25, 2006, it was announced that ECW would relaunch, as a third WWE brand. Heyman was in charge of the new brand on camera but had minimal creative input off camera as well. This would turn Heyman face for the first time in his career. On the May 29 episode of Raw, during a face-off with Mick Foley, Heyman announced that he was granted a draft pick from both Raw and SmackDown by Vince McMahon. His Raw draft pick was former ECW wrestler Rob Van Dam, and his SmackDown draft pick was Kurt Angle. Angle then came down to the ring and attacked Foley, hitting him with an angle slam. Heyman predicted that Van Dam would defeat John Cena at One Night Stand for the WWE Championship and then declare himself the new ECW World Heavyweight Champion. On the June 2 edition of SmackDown, Heyman served as a guest commentator for Angle's final match on the brand. At One Night Stand, Van Dam defeated John Cena to win the WWE Championship. After Cena knocked an ECW referee unconscious, Edge appeared and speared Cena through a table, before taking out SmackDown referee Nick Patrick, allowing Van Dam to hit the 5-star frog splash on Cena. With no referee available, Heyman ran down the aisle to count the pinfall and cement his face turn. The following night on Raw, Heyman confirmed that because the championship match was contested under ECW rules that the decision stands and VD is the undisputed WWE Champion. As the WWE Champion, Van Dam was the #1 man in the reformed ECW, so on the debut of ECW on Sci-Fi the next night, Heyman, announced as an ECW representative, presented him with a reinstated ECW World Heavyweight Championship. Heyman had previously implied that RVD would rechristen the WWE Championship into the ECW Championship. Van Dam, however, elected to keep both title belts and was recognized as both the WWE and ECW champion. On the July 4, 2006 edition of ECW, The Big Show challenged Van Dam to a match for the ECW Championship. Near the end of the match, Big Show took out the referee prior to VD hitting a 5-star frog splash on Show. Heyman then came out to count the pin but stopped at the count of 2, reverting to a heel. After realizing what happened, Van Dam began chasing Heyman. The distraction allowed Big Show to recover and knock Van Dam to the mat. At this time, Heyman began barking orders at Big Show. He then instructed Big Show to chokeslam Van Dam on a steel chair that had been used earlier in the match. Big Show pinned Van Dam and Heyman made the 3 count, screwing Van Dam out of the ECW Championship. Being that Philadelphia was the home of ECW, and the audience at the Watch Irvia Center was the first true ECW-style fanbase for an ECW on Sci-Fi show, the fans were so incensed by the title change that many of them threw garbage and debris into the ring. This incident has been referred to by the WWE as the South Philly Screwjob. WWE.com then announced that Heyman was suspending Van Dam for 30 days. Heyman began referring to himself as the Messiah and Father of ECW, justifying his actions, stating anything can happen in ECW, and VD got what he deserved. He also began being accompanied to ECW events by a pair of private security guards in riot gear, ostensibly to protect him from ECW wrestlers and fans who were angry about his recent actions. Heyman's character has also been shown as having a bias toward the new faces of ECW instead of the ECW originals. The only new face of ECW he had not shown bias towards was CM Punk, likely due to Punk's status as a then babyface again. Due to a behind-the-scenes dispute over ECW's first solo pay-per-view under WWE which aired December 3, 2006, WWE Chairman Vince McMahon and Heyman clashed in front of several members of the writing team on McMahon's corporate jet the day after the pay-per-view, and Heyman ended up traveling home from the Raw ECW taping in South Carolina. After turning down Stephanie McMahon Levesque's behind-the-scenes offer to return to his post-writing TV for WWE developmental television shows, Heyman quietly parted ways with WWE in late 2006. It was over a year after his dismissal before Heyman commented on the departure, revealing that the resurrection of ECW was mishandled in his opinion and how his booking ideas for December to Dismember were completely different from Vince McMahon's. Heyman disagreed with Lashley becoming the champion. He also felt that taking Sabu out of the main event was a ridiculous idea, claiming he would be perfect for the Extreme Elimination Chamber. Vince however felt that he could be removed in place of Hardcore Holly, in order to big up Lashley for becoming the new champ. Heyman also felt that Big Show should be eliminated early on in the match by CM Punk via submission, in order to push the rising star. Big Show also agreed with this idea, also wanting to help push Punk's rising career, but Vince once more disagreed. Return to WWE. Paul Heyman returned to WWE on the May 7, 2012 episode of Raw as Brock Lesnar's legal advisor. He announced that Brock Lesnar had quit the company, and was never coming back. The following week on Raw, Heyman confronted Triple H, handing him a lawsuit from Lesnar for breaching a valid contract. Triple H responded by physically grabbing Heyman by the face and shove him backward into the ropes, leading Heyman to announce that he would file a lawsuit against Triple H for assault and battery. On the June 18 Raw, Heyman declined Triple H's challenge for a match at SummerSlam, on Lesnar's behalf before Triple H punched him. Later that month, Heyman stated that Brock Lesnar will answer Triple H's challenge himself at the 1000th episode of Raw. On Raw 1000, Heyman was assaulted by Stephanie McMahon. Lesnar would go on to defeat Triple H at SummerSlam, where, on the following night's episode of Raw, Lesnar once again announced he was leaving the WWE. Heyman aligned himself with CM Punk on the September 3 episode of Raw after he was seen driving the car Punk had entered. Heyman began accompanying Punk to the ring for his matches and promos. On the October 8 Raw he attempted to propose to Raw General Manager AJ Lee in order to also have power running Raw, but she slapped him in the face. Mr. McMahon cost CM Punk the title at Royal Rumble when he restarted the main event match after Punk initially cheated to win and The Rock pinned Punk to become the new champion. On the January 28 edition of Raw, Mr. McMahon was given an F5 by Brock Lesnar when McMahon was ready to fire Heyman for lying about using the Shield and Maddox to help CM Punk during his championship reign. The next week on Raw, it was revealed on MIZ-TV that Lesnar was resigned to WWE by General Manager Vicky Guerrero without Heyman's prior knowledge. During MIZ-TV, Lesnar came back and gave an F5 to The Miz. Paul Heyman had his WWE resignation speech on the February 11 Raw, which was halted by CM Punk, and he managed to negotiate a clause with Mr. McMahon that the champion cannot retain the title via count-out of disqualification, as long as the Shield is not involved. Heyman kept good on his promise to support Punk, then unintentionally caused Punk to lose to The Rock at Elimination Chamber when Punk struck him by mistake. Heyman was challenged to a fight by Mr. McMahon on the February 25 edition of Raw, in which Heyman and McMahon traded shots with his crutches. Brock Lesnar interfered on Heyman's behalf, but Triple H showed up and went after Lesnar. CM Punk earned the right to fight The Undertaker in a WrestleMania match after winning a fatal four-way match at Old School Raw, and on the March 25 episode of Raw Triple H signed the contract to face Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. The stipulations being, no holds barred, with Triple H's career on the line. On the subsequent episode of Raw, he elaborated that Triple H's managerial career could be on the line. Heyman also dressed up to impersonate the late Paul Bearer to lure The Undertaker to be attacked by CM Punk on Raw, who was dressed as one of the torch-carrying druids. Punk proceeded to empty ash from the symbolic urn onto the dead man as a sign of disrespect. Both of Heyman's clients lost their high-stakes matches during WrestleMania 29. During Brock Lesnar's match, Heyman received a sweet chin music from Shawn Michaels. On the April 15 episode of Raw, Heyman informed that his client Brock Lesnar once again challenged Triple H at Extreme Rules in a steel cage match. On the following week, Triple H accepted the match and delivered a pedigree to Heyman. As a response, Lesnar and Heyman invaded the headquarters of WWE and trashed the office of Triple H. In Heyman's words, after years of discouraging Lesnar from inflicting more damage and hurt on his opponents or rival, the pedigree Heyman received was the last straw for him to change his stance and encourage Lesnar to hurt Triple H and to maim Triple H in the steel cage, and take him to the extreme. And go further and further. Paul Heyman announced Michael McGillicuddy as the newest Paul Heyman guy on the May 20 Raw and gave him the new name of Curtis Axel. On the May 27 episode of Raw, Paul Heyman appeared on the highlight reel with Chris Jericho, where Jericho challenged CM Punk to a match at Payback which Heyman accepted on Punk's behalf. The next week, Heyman and Jericho signed the contract to make it official. The same week on SmackDown, Jericho faced off against Curtis Axel. As Jericho was closing in on the victory, Heyman stood on the announce table and yelled "It's clobbering time," the phrase Punk uses on his way to the ring. Punk's music began to play, distracting Jericho long enough for Axel to pick up the victory. At Payback, Heyman coached Axel during his match with Wade Barrett and The Miz for the Intercontinental Championship, with Axel winning the match and the title. Heyman then accompanied Punk to the ring later in the show for his match with Chris Jericho. After Payback, a WWE.com exclusive video aired with Punk telling Heyman that he is his friend and not his client. Punk later turned face on the June 17 Raw, challenging Alberto Del Rio, making sure to mention he doesn't want Heyman managing him anymore. Following Punk's match, Punk was attacked by Brock Lesnar. The next week on Raw, Punk demanded answers from Heyman, who swore that he did not ask Brock to attack him. Punk forgave Heyman and hugged him. Punk then faced Darren Young and, following his win, was attacked by Titus O'Neil until Curtis Axel saved him, to Punk's chagrin. Heyman announced that he would team with Axel against the Primetime Players the next week, again to Punk's disapproval. At Money in the Bank, Paul Heyman betrayed CM Punk, costing him his chance at the Money in the Bank briefcase by hitting him twice with a ladder, knocking Punk off the ladder he was ascending. On the August 5 episode of Raw, Punk retaliated by choking Heyman while Heyman was in Curtis Axel's corner during a match. This prompted Brock Lesnar to enter the ring and attack Punk. Heyman later challenged Punk to a one-on-one match for the next week's Raw, which Punk accepted. However, this was revealed to be a trap when Brock Lesnar appeared prior to the match. The plan was foiled, however, when Heyman dared CM Punk to come into the ring and accept the challenge, as CM Punk, who had anticipated the trap and hid under the ring, emerged and attacked Lesnar. However, Punk failed to get his hands on Heyman as Curtis Axel came to Heyman's aid. This led to a match between Lesnar and Punk at SummerSlam, which Lesnar won after interference from Heyman. Heyman and Axel delivered a brutal assault to Punk on Raw the following week, with Heyman breaking a kendo stick over Punk's back while Punk was handcuffed. Heyman was then booked to team with Axel against CM Punk in an elimination handicap match at Night of Champions. Heyman tried various times to get out of the match, which caused general manager Brad Maddox to make the match into a no disqualification elimination handicap match. At Night of Champions, Punk eliminated Axel, leaving Heyman alone with Punk. After receiving a beating from Punk and being placed in handcuffs, just as Heyman did to Punk weeks before, Punk was about to attack Heyman with a kendo stick when Ryback interfered and cost Punk the match by putting Punk through a table. In subsequent weeks, Heyman boasted his win over Punk and Ryback began associating with Heyman. At Battleground, Punk would pin Ryback after a low blow. At Hell in a Cell, Punk defeated both Ryback and Heyman and after the match attacked Heyman on top of the cell, putting an end to their feud. On the November 11, 2013 episode of Raw, Heyman stated that he was no longer with Ryback as Ryback never officially accepted his proposal to become a Paul Heyman guy. After that, CM Punk came out to once again beat Heyman with a kendo stick. The following night on SmackDown, Heyman formally announced to Curtis Axel and Ryback that they were no longer Paul Heyman guys, therefore marking the end of Axel's association with Heyman as he continued to team with Ryback. Heyman returned on the December 30 edition of Raw alongside Brock Lesnar, who attacked Mark Henry. He also stood by Lesnar as he feuded with Big Show and The Undertaker in the first 4 months of 2014. Heyman's client, Brock Lesnar, conquered The Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania XXX. This was Undertaker's first loss at a WrestleMania, as he previously had a record of 21 wins. On the Raw following WrestleMania, Cesaro revealed himself to be a Paul Heyman guy. Cesaro eventually declared himself no longer a Paul Heyman guy on the July 21 edition of Raw. After Triple H announced that Randy Orton would challenge John Cena at SummerSlam, Roman Reigns came out and fought with Orton backstage. Heyman then came out and told Triple H to implement Plan C, which was the return of Brock Lesnar, and would have a Brock Lesnar match against Cena at SummerSlam. Other media: Heyman launched a multimedia project with the paper called the Heyman Hustle, which he describes as the high-definition video blog of a rambling mind. It features video of Heyman interacting with celebrities from various fields of entertainment on the streets of New York City, as well as regular writings of Heyman's take on the world of professional wrestling, including his thoughts on the McMahon family, the Chris Benoit murder-suicide, Ric Flair's retirement, and Joey Styles being replaced by Mike Adam as the ECW play-by-play commentator. Notable guests of the first season of The Hustle include Holly Madison, Ice-T and Coco, James Lipton, Aubrey O'Day, and Jesse Ventura. The Heyman Hustle became the flagship for News Corp's Sun TV broadband television network, and Heyman expanded the brand in New York City to open an advertising, marketing, and branding firm called the Looking for Larry Agency. Heyman collaborated with award-winning NYC ad executive Mitchell K. Stewart of Headquarters Creative Services to form the company, which immediately signed up EA Sports as their first client. After successful viral campaigns with EA, the Looking for Larry Agency became the agency of record for THQ video games, where Heyman and Stewart wrote, directed, and produced viral videos for THQ games such as All Stars, WWE 12, and WWE 13. Heyman's video game debut as WWE SmackDown vs. Raw as a playable manager. He is also featured in WWE 2K14 as a manager. In 2011, Heyman worked with Brock Lesnar once again, this time collaborating with him on Lesnar's autobiography, Death Clutch, My Story of Determination, Domination, and Survival. It was published by William Morrow & Company on May 24, 2011. Acting: Heyman portrayed a sports announcer in 2002's Rollerball. His performance received critical acclaim, but the film did not. Director John McTiernan's Rollerball is an atrocious remake, reported Variety, whose only saving grace is the hysterical performance by wrestling producer and performer Paul Heyman, who pretty much plays himself to perfection. Heyman was later chosen by I Am Legend executive producer Michael Tadros to play Gino in the film adaptation of long-running off-Broadway show Tony and Tina's Wedding. Personal life: Heyman has two children, daughter Azalea Heyman, who was born on July 31, 2002, and son Jacob Heyman, who was born on May 28, 2004. Heyman's father, Richard S. Heyman, died on June 25, 2013 at the age of 87. His mother was a Holocaust survivor, and died in 2009. In wrestling, wrestlers managed: Tommy Rich, Austin Idol, Colonel De Beers, Adrian Adonis, Mark Callis, Steve Austin, Rick Rude, Arn Anderson, Larry Zbysko, Bobby Eaton, The Masked Intruder, Medusa, Don Muraco, Jimmy Snuka, Eddie Gilbert, Rey Mysterio, Dark Patriot, Sabu, Taz the Tasmaniac, 911, Brock Lesnar, Big Show, Kurt Angle, Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas, A-Train, Hyun Ryuk, Rob Van Dam, Matt Morgan, Nathan Jones, Rhino, Tommy Dreamer, Bob Orton, Test, Hardcore Holly, CM Punk, Curtis Axel, Ryback, Cesaro. Stables and tag teams managed: The Original Midnight Express, The New Original Midnight Express, Samoan SWAT Team, The Dangerous Alliance, The New Dangerous Alliance, Eddie Gilbert, Jimmy Snuka, Don Muraco, and Dark Patriot, Team Angle, The Dudley Boys, Rebaxel. Nicknames: The One Behind the One and 21-1 after Brock Lesnar ended The Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania XXX. The Best in the World, self-proclaimed after pinning CM Punk at Night of Champions. The Mad Scientist, the voice of the voiceless, the Messiah of a New Breed Unleashed, the Rabbi of the Revolution, the Swinging Schlong of the Extreme, one of the greatest minds in professional wrestling. Entrance themes: This is Extreme by Harry Slash and the Slashstones, Balls to the Wall by Chimera, Mental by Brian New, Next Big Thing by Jim Johnston, Cult of Personality by Living Colour, Reborn by Jim Johnston, Meat on the Table by Jim Johnston, Swiss Made by CFO Dollar. Awards and Accomplishments, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, PWI Manager of the Year. Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards, Best Booker, Best on Interviews, Best Non-Wrestler, Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. References. External links. Paul Heyman at the Internet Movie Database, Paul Heyman's profile on WWE.com, Paul Heyman biography.